transformation. Has there ever been a term more overused? I don't know. Maybe omni-channel, maybe big data would be two that rival. But digital transformation certainly has been an overused term over the past 5 to 10 years. There's no doubt about it. But did you know that there's a 95% chance that your digital transformation effort will fail? It's probably not a surprise. Probably most of you watching this video have been a part in some way of an organization trying to digitally transform their business, and it probably didn't work. You know, I posted an article below from CEO World Magazine where it says that there's about a 5% chance that your digital transformation project will succeed or meet expectations. That is scary. In the world of the great technology tools that we have today, all the great big name consulting companies, whether they be strategy or IT, the fact that 5% of organizations are able to meet or exceed their expectations on a digital transformation project is mind-blowing. But I guess actually, after spending a lot of time inside a lot of large organizations, it's really not that mind-blowing, right? And we're going to dive into why that is today and some of the things that we can be doing about it in order to push our goals and initiatives forward and ultimately reach the consumer the way that we want to do it, right? So let's talk about digital transformation from a business outcome perspective. Everybody has kind of a different idea of, you know, digital transformation, what it means, how you do it. The reality is, though, that digital transformation really came about because of what happened to you and me in the consumer marketplace, right? We changed. We no longer get our information via the mail. We fast forward through all the television commercials. You know, when we walk into a store, we're typically not finding things for the very first time. We know a lot about what we're going to see before we even walk in. And if we even are still going to a store to buy something, we know exactly where it is, what it is, how much it costs, all the features and benefits that we're going to get. Once we grab that thing and throw it in our trunk, we get it, right? We are more armed than ever via the phone, right? We're connected. Our situation changed. The leverage changed between the consumer and brands. And in order to do that, brands said, oh man, we gotta engage. And there's really two sides to that coin, right? There's the brands that kind of came up and created themselves during this era of digitization, right? So they're what we call digitally native brands. These are typically smaller brands because they haven't been around for a long time, but they're brands that have great technology. They usually tell a really cool story. They connect with their consumers in a really neat way. They provide a great experience across all the different channels that are out there. They're your digitally native brands, right? And they're the ones that are the thorn in the side of all the giant organizations out there who were slow to pick up the digital trend, right? Slow for probably a couple of reasons. Number one, they've got a lot of technical debt. You know, I've run into companies all the time that are still running AS400 databases that I'm pretty sure my grandfather probably sold them before he retired from IBM, right? I mean, they've got a pride factor, an arrogance factor. Let's just call it what it is. For 75 years or 100 years, they may have been the only game in town, right? So what's to think that I'm not going to be the only game in town another 100 years from now, right? These little digital brands, man, they're trends. They're fast fashion. They're going to go away soon. We're the ones with the staying power, right? But the truth is that we know that that's not reality. You can go look up all the statistics that you'd like about the number of customers or the number of companies that were on the Fortune 500 list 25, 30, 40 years ago that are nowhere to be found today, right? Staying power has nothing to do with the size of your organization or the money that you have in the bank. It may help for a little while. The big brand that you've built over the last 100 years may help for a little while, right? It may buy you a little bit of extra time, but at the end of the day, if you don't change to meet the consumer where they are, you will be dead, right? We know that. But that's ultimately what happened with digital transformation is these big brands said, we gotta change. We got to go compete in a new market that's kind of new and different to us. We got to have some new tools. Got to put up a little bit better image. We're the kind of, we're the dad in the cool, slim cut jeans, right? We gotta go out there and come up with the new image, right? So that we can compete with these new brands. But when you really pull back the covers of a lot of these large organizations, you'll find some things that make it really difficult to execute on that strategy. And this is, I think, what ties back into this article from CEO World magazine about why only 5% of digital projects really succeed. And there's a couple of big reasons why, right? So if you look at that digital transformation journey and why companies are doing that, it's so that they can put a singular focus across all channels on the consumer, right? They want to have data in one place, or as much as possible. They want to know everything that they can about you so they can position the right product at the right time, in the right circumstance. And you go, wow, how did they know that I needed, an ice cold drink when I'm standing in the 95-degree sun, and the Bluetooth beacon went off on my phone as I walked past the vending machine, and I got a 50 cents off coupon. Wow, thanks. What a great experience. My favorite beverage brand, right? That's great, but when you pull back the covers of what's actually happening inside these organizations, you'll find some things that are make it very difficult for that to actually take place in real world at scale, right? And that's the most important part, is at scale. Not like I did a cool IoT project over in a country that no one's ever heard of before, and it worked really well. But now I have no idea how to roll it out to any other place. Doesn't really mean much, right? So what are those things that are happening inside the organization that we need to be addressing, right? Well, this CEO World article talks about this concept that you don't hear a lot about in MBA school. You don't hear a lot about it in executive leadership training, and that's this concept of orchestration, right? And that's what it sounds like. How do I orchestrate the band, orchestrate the pieces and parts of my business so that they can go out and execute their pieces in an orchestrated fashion in order for us to reach our end goal, right? Now, we all know that if you're leading a band or you're leading an organization, that if everybody plays their instrument at the same time, it doesn't sound very good. You also know that if nobody plays their instrument, well, it sounds like nothing, and the consumer standing there over across the consumer chasm wondering what the heck is going on with this brand and when are they going to figure out that times have changed, right? So that's kind of setting the stage for what's going on. But what do we do about it? What's holding us back, right? Well, I think it's a couple things. A lot of organizations today, when you look inside of them, are very, very siloed. And there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years around, how do we remove those barriers, those silos inside the organization? And it's just proven much harder, I think, than people thought. It's easy to talk about, but the reality is that there's a lot of personal feelings, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of governance, there's a lot of oversight, and there's a lot of people who don't want to let go of their fiefdom for fear that they may lose their job, or they'll get replaced, or somebody smarter than them will have a better idea. And if I can just hold this thing close, I'll be able to continue to push forward, at least until I can pack it in for retirement. And that's a lot of what's happening. I'm just calling it straight, right? I think we all know this. Sometimes it's hard for us to say, but it's the reality, right? And I think the other big thing is the types of leaders. So when you think about this concept of orchestration, somebody has to be doing the orchestration, right? And usually that's at the CEO level. That's ultimately kind of, the buck stops with the CEO, right? So ultimately, you need pretty strong, dynamic CEOs who can paint the vision and do that orchestration. But so often, you walk inside an organization and you find one of two things, right? You find the CEO who is pretty set in their ways. Maybe they're getting on in their career. They got pretty nice little salary, a couple 100,000 options coming in every year. They've got a 5-year contract. Let's not rock the boat. let's get to 2025, 2024, whatever it is. I'll pack it in. The next guy or gal can come figure it out behind me. Now, chances are probably be too late at that point in time, or irreparable damage will have been done to the business. But you do see a lot of that. Again, just calling it how it is, right? The other thing that you see is CEOs and executive leaders who do want to take control. They do want to orchestrate things, but they have kind of like a very bad way of orchestrating, right? And their way of orchestrating is just they tell you all of their ideas, right? And unfortunately, that means all of your ideas now suck. They're not any good. They're not worth anything. You may be able to voice an opinion, but at the end of the day, we all know that that opinion is not going to mean much. And that's something that we see over and over and over and again. Ultimately, that breeds consent, not consent. It breeds dissent. It breeds frustration. And while someone may consent and give you some things, more often than not, they just hold that stuff closer, right? Or they quit, right? And they go to another organization, and chances are they take a lot of that mind share and capital with them, probably to one of that company's competitors. And now you're kind of like double hit, and really hurting. So what can we be doing as consultants, as salespeople, as employees inside of these business? Well, ultimately, I actually think that digital transformation starts almost not at the CEO level. It starts there from a vision perspective, and you definitely need operational and financial guidance. I think one of the most important, if not the most important pieces to digital transformation and why digital transformation projects are not successful. Yes, it goes back to this concept of orchestration, but underneath that layer of orchestration are people like you and me, right? We have jobs. We wake up in the morning, we go to work. We may be, an associate just starting out. We may be an executive leader. Wherever you fall on the scale, you have a job to do when you wake up in the morning, and your job is to execute to the best of your ability. And so what does that mean for our digital transformation projects? It means that from a digital transformation perspective, one of the most important roles that I see not involved nearly enough is HR. HR? Digital transformation? You mean we should give the HR department like a cloud HR tool like Workday or SuccessFactors or something? No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is getting the HR department involved very early on in any digital transformation process, so that at the executive level, from CEO, COO, CFO, CMO, Chief Human Resource Officer, right? There needs to be a collaborative discussion around, here's the vision, here's the financials around how we're going to get to it, here's the operational structure and process of how we're going to get there, right? You got to have those for sure. But the missing piece inside literally almost every single organization, I'd argue 95% of them according to the stats from CEO World magazine, I bet this would be a very strong indicator, is that HR is involved probably not at all or very, very little. And when you talk about getting HR involved, we're not talking about getting HR involved to give them a new system or make sure that people don't, offend somebody throughout the process. We're talking about how do you get HR involved to understand realistically where your organization is from a performance perspective and a training perspective, and a compensation perspective, so that you can not only align the strategy and the processes and the finances around the digital transformation project, but the most important thing is how do you align your people strategy, your training strategy, the enablement strategy, so that the organization, the people that are going to be responsible for doing the work, understand what the vision is, what their role in this new vision is, and that they have the tools and the training to go do it, right? So often, right, we see organizations that just try to mix and reuse talent inside their organization. And there's nothing wrong with keeping people around as as times change and business cycles fluctuate. The problem is that there's not a lot of training that goes along with it, right? And so, the mobile guy can't all of a sudden become the API guy overnight as a part of your digital transformation strategy, right? The AS400 guy probably can't become, the omni-channel, there's your word, the omni-channel e-commerce guy overnight, right? There needs to be some processes that take place inside the organization at the HR and enablement level. And man, I just see this missing over and over and over inside organizations today. And we wonder, why do we fail? Despite having all the best consultants and all the new and greatest technology tools, what the greatest strategy in the world, why do companies continue to fall on their face when it comes to these digital transformation strategies? It's so easy. It's so easy, but it's so hard, right? And that is, they're not training their people. They're not enabling their people, right? And so the people that are sitting there kind of like wondering, well, what's the strategy and how do I fit in? They do one of two things, right? Just like you have the CEO that either sits in the corner or more often than not is just overbearing and tells you how it's going to be and they're not collaborative. The same thing happens with your employees, right? They either sit in the corner until somebody finds them and says you're not doing anything productive, even though they probably never knew what they could be doing in a productive way, or you have people who just, man, they're dying to add value to the business. So these are the people that are just, man, give me more. I want to work outside my job description, and you won't let them, right? And so what happens with those people over time is they either leave and go start their own business, or they quit and they go to a competitor, right? And they go do something else with somebody who appreciates what they want to do, right? So to kind of bring all this together, digital transformation, overused term, lots of different meanings out there to different people. Ultimately, though, brought to you in response of what happened to you and me as we started to get more power and gain more leverage on the brands and companies that we engage with, right? We're connected, therefore companies and organizations have to be connected, right? We have lots of information, therefore they need to have lots of information that's relevant to us, right? That's the dynamic. So now digital transformation has to take place, right? New tools have to come into the fold. The problem, again, summing this all up, is that in organizations' goals to bring information together so that they can better serve you, they've really struggled bringing their own internal organizations together around that singular mission to provide a better experience, to provide a better product, and to meet us as consumers where we are, right? And this has been a historical struggle, and so now, bring all that back. How do we do it? We have great strategy, we have great tools, we have great processes. What's the missing link? The missing link is our people, right? It's the executors. It's the day-to-day execution. How do we solve that? Man, there needs to be some really heartfelt, heart-to-heart, brutally honest conversations with HR, with the people in charge of our people, so that we can begin to empower the folks that are doing all of this work that are going to either make us successful or prohibit our growth and prohibit our success. We've got to go to them. We've got to go to them and enable them, right? And this is the missing link. I see it literally every single day where organizations will embark on some massive transformational journey, and they'll spend millions of dollars on software and consulting, but they won't spend $100,000 to train their people. It's just, and we wonder why we have low adoption. We wonder why our employees quit. We wonder why our transformation projects don't work, right? It's not that difficult, but we need CEOs, we need executive leaders who are not afraid to reach across to the human resources department and bring the rest of the organization with them, so that the right people with the right training and the right enablement and the right skill sets can go execute on these new visions that ultimately tie to digital transformation so that they can meet you and me as consumers where we are. Would love to understand what your thoughts are. Maybe you've got some experience with this. Shoot me a note, drop me a comment, and check out this article from CEO World. Fantastic, fantastic, quick read. I really think you'll enjoy it. Till next time, talk soon.